Look, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Most of you are being lied to by your own living room. You go out, you spend $3,000 on a brand new bleeding edge 4K TV because the box promised you 5,000 nits of eye-searing brightness, right? Then you sit down to watch Dune or the latest Netflix masterpiece, and it looks like a cheap soap opera. The skin tones, they look like orange Gatorade. The shadows, they're just gone, just swallowed by some AI optimization engine that thinks it knows better than the director who spent 6 months in a grading suite. It's the fake color trap, and in 2026, it's getting worse. Brands are racing for numbers that don't matter while they quietly murder the actual art. But there is one panel, just one, that actually respects the math. It's the only one I've tested this year that makes Netflix look, well, real. Before we tear into the data and I show you exactly which manufacturers are faking it, do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. We don't take a dime from these brands, which means I can actually tell you when their flagships are trash. Your support is the only reason I can keep these guys honest. Ready? Let's get into the stuff they don't want you to see. So let's talk about the elephant in the living room. It's 2026, and we are officially living through the Nit Wars. Last year, every brand was screaming about 3,000 nits, 4,000 nits, even 5,000 nits. They want you to think that because a TV can physically sear your retinas, it's a better TV. But here's the cold, hard truth. Brightness is the easiest thing to fake. If you want to make a TV look impressive in a brightly lit Best Buy or on Amazon listing, you just crank the backlight and oversaturate the reds. Boom, it looks punchy. But then you get it home, you dim the lights, you fire up a high bitrate Netflix stream, and suddenly the actors look like they've had a bad spray tan. The shadows aren't black, they're a weird milky gray. That's not ultra high definition, that's marketing software trying to redraw the movie for you. Enter the Sony Bravia 8 II. Now look, I'll be the first to tell you that Sony charges a brand tax. You are going to pay more for this 55-inch or 65-inch panel than you would for a comparable mini LED from almost anyone else. But after 3 weeks of lab testing and, more importantly, actual couch time, I've realized Sony isn't selling you nits. They're selling you Delta E less than 1.0. For the non-nerds out there, Delta E is just a fancy way of measuring how far a color on your screen is from the actual true color intended by the creator. Anything under 3.0 is considered good. Anything under 2.0 is professional grade. This Sony, out of the box in its professional and Netflix calibrated modes, it's hitting under 1.0. That is essentially invisible to the human eye. It means when you see a sunset on this screen, you're seeing the exact hue the colorist saw on their $30,000 BVM reference monitor in Hollywood. How are they doing it? It's all in the XR processor Gen 3. Most TV processors treat an image like a flat grid. They see a patch of blue, they sharpen the blue. They see a face, they smooth the face. It's dumb AI. Sony's approach is what they call cognitive intelligence. The processor actually analyzes the scene to find the focal point, the place your eyes are naturally going to land. If a character is speaking, the chip pours its processing power into the texture of their skin and the clarity of their eyes, while keeping the background natural. It mimics how humans actually perceive the world, and because this is a QD OLED panel, you're getting the best of both worlds. You get the infinite contrast of OLED, where every single pixel can turn completely off, combined with the color volume of quantum dots. I sat this thing right next to the Samsung S95F, which is a spectacular TV, don't get me wrong. The Samsung is brighter, it pops more. If you're watching cartoons or vibrant sports in a room with 5 windows, you might actually prefer the Samsung. But when I put on a dark, moody scene from Mindhunter, the Samsung started guessing. It tried to brighten the shadows to show off its power, and in doing so, it ruined the tension. The Sony, it stayed dark. It stayed moody. It respected the director's choice to keep you in the dark. But it's not all sunshine and perfect blacks. I told you I'd protect your wallet, and here is where I have to call out Sony. It is 2026. We are deep into the life cycle of the PS5 Pro and the next-gen Xbox, and yet Sony, the company that makes the PlayStation, still only gives us 2 full-bandwidth HDMI 2.1 ports. 2. And one of them is the eARC port. So if you have a high-end soundbar and 2 consoles, you're playing a game of musical cables just to get 4K 120Hz or 144Hz. It's honestly insulting at this price point. LG gives you 4, Samsung gives you 4, Sony, they're still acting like HDMI 2.1 is some rare, precious resource. Also, let's talk about the Netflix calibrated mode. A lot of people think this is just a gimmick. It's not. When you toggle that on, the TV actually talks to the Netflix app. It looks at the metadata of the specific show you're watching and says, okay, this was filmed in Dolby Vision at this specific frame rate and this specific color gamut, and it locks the TV into those settings. It disables all the fake motion smoothing, what I call the soap opera effect, and gives you the raw, unadulterated file. The result, the plastic look disappears. The neon glow is gone. You're left with an image that feels heavy. It feels cinematic. It feels real. But look, I know everyone has different priorities. Maybe you don't care about director's intent. Maybe you just want a TV that can fight the afternoon sun so you can watch the game without closing the curtains. Or maybe you're a hardcore gamer who needs that 144Hz refresh rate for competitive shooters, and you couldn't care less about skin tones. That's why I need to hear from you. Drop a comment below right now and tell me, what are you actually looking for in your next upgrade? Are you a dark room movie snob like me? Are you looking for a budget-friendly giant for the basement? Or are you waiting for the 2026 gaming monitors to drop? Tell me what you want me to tear apart next, and I'll make it happen. But look, I know what some of you are thinking. Chris, I love the idea of a reference-grade Sony, but I live in a modern apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows. I can't watch a movie in a cave every day. And that is exactly where the S95F enters the conversation.
The Sony is the surgical scalpel of the TV world. The Samsung S95F is a sledgehammer made of pure light. This is a QD OLED panel that Samsung claims can hit north of 2100 nits in small highlights. In my testing, it actually pushed past 2200. That is, honestly, it's bordering on irresponsible for an OLED. But the real magic isn't just the brightness, it's the OLED glare-free 2.0 coating. Samsung went with a matte finish this year, and it has divided the internet. The purists will tell you that a matte screen kills the perceived contrast and makes blacks look slightly gray in a bright room. And they aren't technically wrong. If you shine a flashlight directly at it, you'll see a faint haze. But in a real-world US living room at 2 p.m. on a Sunday, the Samsung wins. Period. While the Sony is showing you a perfect reflection of your own face in your kitchen cabinets, the Samsung is showing you the movie. However, and this is a big however, we have to talk about the Samsung saturation trap. Samsung's NQ4 AI Gen 3 processor is incredibly powerful, but it's also a bit of a micromanager. Even in filmmaker mode, it can't help itself. It sees a blue sky and thinks, that's nice, but wouldn't it be better if it was neon cyberpunk blue? It sees a field of grass and wants to turn it into a lime-flavored Jolly Rancher. It's impressive, sure, it'll stop people in their tracks at the store, but is it real? No. And the most frustrating part? Still no Dolby Vision. It's 2026. Netflix, Disney+, Apple TV, they all prioritize Dolby Vision for their high-end masters. Samsung is still stubborn about their HDR10+ format, which is fine, but it means the TV has to tone map Dolby Vision content on the fly, and it occasionally gets it wrong. If you're a purist, that lack of license is a deal breaker. But if you're a gamer, man, the S95F is a dream. You get 4 full HDMI 7.1 ports, a 144Hz native refresh rate that can actually push to 165Hz for PC gaming, and a dedicated gaming hub that is actually, dare I say, useful? Now, if the Sony is too expensive and the Samsung is too flashy, where does that leave everyone else? It leaves you with the LG C5. For 5 years, the C-Series has been the default recommendation for anyone who wants a good OLED. And the C5 is exactly that. It's the Toyota Camry of high-end TVs. It doesn't have the QD OLED pop of the Samsung or the Sony because it's still using white OLED technology. It's not as bright, it doesn't have the same color volume in the highlights, but what it does have is consistency. LG's WebOS 25 is, in my opinion, the most stable smart platform on the market. Their Magic Remote is still the only one that feels natural to use.
And for gamers, LG is still the gold standard. They were the first to give us 4 HDMI 2.1 ports across the board, and they still have the lowest input lag in the business. We're talking under 10 milliseconds at 60 Hz and practically 0 at 144 Hz. But here's the stuff they don't tell you in the manual. The C5 is using a brightness booster algorithm that pushes the panel harder than ever before. Because it doesn't have a physical heatsink like the more expensive LG G5 or the Sony, it has to use thermal throttling. If you're watching a long movie with lots of bright scenes like a snowy landscape or a desert trek, the TV will eventually realize it's getting too hot and it will slowly, almost imperceptibly, dim the screen to protect the pixels. It's a safety feature, but it means your 1200 nit TV might only be an 800 nit TV after an hour of use. And look, I know a lot of you are watching this and saying, Chris, these are all $2,000 screens. Give me something for the rest of us. This is where the Hisense U8 2026 and the TCL QM7K come in. These are mini LED powerhouses. They aren't OLEDs, which means they use thousands of tiny LEDs behind an LCD panel. In 2026, these things are hitting 3,000 to 4,000 nits. They are literal light cannons.
The Hisense U8 is a beast for the price. If you want a 75-inch or 85-inch screen that makes your house feel like a commercial theater, this is the math that makes sense. But here's the weird part. Hisense uses a very aggressive local dimming algorithm. When it works, it's great, but when you have something small and bright on a dark background, like a star field or even just white subtitles, you're going to see blooming. That faint white haze creeping into the black bars of your movie, that's the mini LEDs failing to contain their own light. And then there's the TCL QM7K. TCL has this new halo control tech that actually does a better job than Hisense at stopping that blooming, but their color calibration is, well, it's quirky. Out of the box, the movie mode on the TCL runs weirdly warm. Skin tones look a little too red brick, and greens have a slight neon tint. You can fix it in the settings, and I'll put my recommended calibration settings in the description, but you shouldn't have to perform surgery on a new TV just to make people look human. There's also a hidden issue I'm seeing across almost all the 2026 mini LEDs, PWM flicker. To control the brightness of those thousands of LEDs, the TVs pulse the light on and off very quickly. Most people can't see it, but for about 10% of the population, it causes massive eye strain and headaches after an hour of viewing. If you've ever felt tired after watching a bright TV, it's probably not the brightness, it's the flicker. The OLEDs we talked about earlier, they don't do that. They are flicker-free. It's one of those invisible health metrics that brands never put on the box, but it's the difference between a relaxing movie night and a migraine. And speaking of stuff they hide, let's talk about the ATSC 3.0 Trap. A lot of these US market TVs in 2026 are quietly dropping the next-gen TV tuners to save on licensing costs. If you rely on an antenna for free local 4K broadcasts of sports or news, you need to check the fine print. Sony and Samsung are usually good about keeping them, but some of the value models are cutting that corner to keep the price under that $1,000 psychological barrier. So, where does that leave us? You've got the Sony for the purists, the Samsung for the sun-drenched living rooms, the LG for the safe all-rounder, and the Hisense and TCL Duo for the big screen on a budget crowd. But none of that matters if you buy the wrong size or the wrong tech for your specific room. I've seen people drop $5,000 on a flagship OLED only to put it in a room with a massive chandelier and a wall of windows, effectively turning their $5,000 TV into a $5,000 mirror. It's a tragedy. Before we get to the final verdict and I tell you which one of these I'm actually putting in my own house, I want to make sure I'm covering what you need. So, look, we've waded through the weeds of peak brightness, dimming zones, and those annoying HDMI port shortages. Now we have to answer the only question that actually matters. Which one of these is going to make you happy 6 months from now when the new TV smell has faded and you're just trying to enjoy a movie? I've spent the last 3 weeks staring at these panels until my eyes hurt, and the market in 2026 is basically split into 4 very distinct camps. If you don't know which camp you're in, you're going to overspend on features you'll never use, or worse, you'll save $500 today and regret it every time the sun hits your living room.
First up, the reference enthusiast. This is the person the title of this video was written for. If you're the type of person who turns all the lights off, puts your phone in another room, and wants to see exactly what the cinematographer saw, there is no competition. It's the Sony Bravia 8 II. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, the 2 HDMI port thing is a slap in the face, but when you see the way this thing handles skin tones, how it captures the subtle micro textures of a face without making it look like plastic, you realize Sony is playing a different game. While everyone else is trying to win a spec sheet war, Sony is building a window. If your goal is to make Netflix look real, this is the only one that gets a perfect score. It doesn't enhance the image, it respects it.
Then you've got the bright room warrior. This is probably 70% of you. You have a living room with windows, you watch the game on Sunday afternoons, and you're tired of seeing your own reflection during dark movie scenes. For you, the Samsung S95F is the only logical choice. I've had OLED purists tell me that the matte coating is a crime against humanity, but they're wrong. In a lab, sure, the blacks might look 2% grayer under a microscope compared to a glossy screen, but in a real US home, that matte finish is a superpower. Combine that with the One Connect box, which honestly every TV should have, and the sheer staggering brightness of this QD OLED panel, and you've got the most versatile TV of 2026. It's the everything TV. It games like a beast, it fights the sun, and it looks like a piece of art on the wall. But what if you're a console main? You've got a PS5 Pro, an Xbox Series X, and maybe a Switch too. You need ports, you need low latency, and you want a TV that just works. That is the LG C5. It's not the brightest, and it's not the most accurate out of the box, but the LG C5 is the most reliable partner for a gamer. Having 4 full HDMI 2.1 ports means you never have to think about which device is plugged into which hole. The Game Optimizer menu is still the best in the business, and the sheer speed of this panel, the near instantaneous response time, gives you a tangible edge in competitive play. It's the safe bet. You buy it, you set it up, and you don't have to think about it for 5 years. Finally, we have the big screen value hunters. You want 75 or 85 inches, but you don't have $5,000 to set on fire. This is where the Hisense U8 and the TCL QM7K are fighting it out in the trenches.
If you want the absolute wow factor for your dollar, it's the Hisense. It is incredibly bright enough that I actually had to turn it down during my late night testing. It's a literal light cannon. But if you're sensitive to blooming, that little halo of light around white text on a black background, then you should look at the TCL QM7K. TCL's halo control isn't a marketing buzzword. It actually works. It makes a mini LED feel a lot closer to an OLED than it has any right to. It's not as bright as the Hisense, and the colors are a bit quirky out of the box, but it's a more refined image overall. Hi, this is Chris Walker, back with the final verdict. Look, here's the truth bomb for 2026. The TV industry is addicted to nits because nits are easy to sell on a box. It's a number. Bigger is better, right? Wrong. We've reached the point of diminishing returns. Unless you are literally watching TV on your front lawn at noon, you do not need 5,000 nits. What you need is control. You need a processor that understands what it's looking at. You need a panel that doesn't guess what a shadow should look like. Most importantly, you need a TV that stays out of the way of the story. So, here are my winners for 2026. The best overall TV of the year? It's the Sony Bravia i8ii. I know it's the boring choice because it's a Sony, but the fact remains that they are the only ones who haven't sacrificed reality at the altar of brightness. If you want the Netflix look, the actual real cinematic experience, this is the king. Just buy a decent HDMI switcher for $40 to solve the port problem and never look back. The best value TV? It has to be the Hisense U8. For under $1,000 in the 65-inch size, you are getting 90% of the performance of those $2,000 flagships. Is it perfect? No. Does it have some quirks? Absolutely. But the dollar-to-performance ratio is so skewed in your favor that it's almost impossible to ignore. Now, I've put links to the specific US versions of these TVs in the description below. I've vetted these listings to make sure they are the 2026 models with the correct warranties and local support. Don't get tripped into buying the 2025 leftover stock just because the price looks similar. Using those links is the safe path to make sure you're actually getting what we talked about today, and it helps support the channel so I can keep buying these things and tearing them apart for you. Don't let the marketing departments win. Buy the tech that actually makes your life better. I'm Chris Walker. I'll see you in the next one.